Go with that. We're delighted to be collaborating with the European Commission, both in hosting today's event, but also in their participation through the leadership. Last week, but I'll let the members tell you about that. So we're really looking forward to a discussion on what I think is really central to everything we're discussing here at COP around accelerating clean energy transitions, the laudable ambition we're seeing for net zero, methane pledges. All of these things have technology and policy elements, but they're all about people. We need to put people at the center of these issues, and we need to understand how people must benefit from the transitions. People who might lose out must be protected and supported, and these must be central principles, as all of our speakers, I'm sure, will reiterate. So let me move straight away to our opening speakers, two great leaders in this space. We're delighted to have you both. And let me start straight away with our host here in the pavilion today, the Energy Commissioner of the European Commission, Kadri Simpson. Commissioner Simpson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this session along with FATI, co-organized with the International Energy Agency. When we talk about the energy transition, we are talking about radically changing our way of life for the better. Europe has pledged to cut emissions by 55% by 2030, and this is the logical but ambitious step we need to take to reach net zero by the middle of this century.
it was Europe basically only who was holding the flag in the fight against climate change many, many years when many people were not around. We have to be very honest here, very frank here. Now everybody is around. This is very good. But Europe has been years and years the leader of the fight against climate change in the international context. So therefore, I wanted to underline this and thank our colleagues from EU for making sure that the flag of fighting against climate change was always carried by them and now by all of us. So many thanks for that, and I wanted to register this in this EU Day of COP26. Coming back to our issue, dear colleagues, in our World Energy Outlook, as they say, the Bible of the energy world, lots of analysis, lots of numbers, my colleagues did, and when I look at those numbers, there is one overall message coming, very clear. All the countries, all the sectors, all the technologies, the message is the following: a new global energy economy is emerging. Very clear. Wherever you look at it, which country you pay attention to, it is wind, it is solar, electric cars, efficiency, the hydrogen, it's coming everywhere. Latin America, Europe, Asia, North America, Africa, everywhere. Big change is happening. Now, this is, of course, very good for the climate change, for environment, and this also means that the global energy industry and the global economy is being transformed. And like in all transformations, there are winners and losers. The biggest win for all of us today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow is preserving our climate, our quality of our air. And this transformation, new energy industries are also creating millions of jobs, good quality, high-skilled jobs. This is all very good. And we look at how many jobs are created and how many jobs are going to be lost because there will not be a demand, for example, for coal mining in the next years to come. When you add them, compare them, how many jobs are created, clean energy jobs, and how many jobs are lost, such as coal mining, more jobs are created than the jobs are lost. But unfortunately, life is not a mathematical equation. Jobs created may well be somewhere else than where the jobs lost are. You may create a lot of new jobs in Europe, but you may lose jobs in Africa. Even in a country, you may create jobs on the west part of the country and lose on the east part of the country. This happens. So therefore, in my view, when we look at the clean energy transition, it is going very strongly around the world, and nobody can stop it, by the way. Even if we want it, we cannot stop it. There are many barriers, but for me, the most important barrier is how are we going to make sure that the negative impacts of the clean energy transition are addressed by the governments themselves and internationally. This is, for me, the most important one. But what is worrying is that the political attention to this issue is extremely weak. We all discuss how we are going to increase the share of renewables, how we are going to move the hydrogen, how we are going to put a carbon price, how we put the efficiency standards. But I have seen very few governments, if any, who have a well-developed, well-designed strategy how we are going to address the possible negative impacts on their citizens. There are a couple of examples, of course, I will say in a minute. But for me, if a country develops a hydrogen strategy, many countries are doing this, countries also need to build a strategy how they are going to deal with the fact that the clean energy transitions should be for and about people. And it is the reason, with this motivation, I convened this commission, high-level commission, people-centered global clean energy transition commission, headed by Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. And Ambassador Christensen is here. Last week, I went to Copenhagen and to thank her and present her our recommendations. She was very happy to chair this meeting, and she will be using recommendations in her deliberations. I would like to thank very much, he is not with us here, but I know that he is following us, Danish Minister Dan Jorgensen and Minister Gadimat. Thank you very much, Merci beaucoup, Madame la Minister, for being our Vice Chair. And we have several members of our commission here. I see Sharon here taking notes all the time. Thank you very much. And we are very happy to have Mr. Wilkinson here. Canada pays a lot of attention to this issue. Mr. Minister, I just talked last week with Minister O'Regan. He gave me a call, who has been a very good member of this commission, who happens to be a very good coincidence or very good result of this commission, become now the labor minister. So my best of luck to Seamus. And Minister Jobet, thank you very much for the great work, what you are doing in person and in your country. And of course, very many thanks to you, Mr. Simpson. You have been not only being a very strong member of this commission, but you and your colleagues supported us very much. And also other members. We have about 30 members from the high-level dignitaries in Vatican to the ministers in China, India, and the thought leaders around the world, and trade union representatives. And also my thanks go to my dear colleague, Mr. Brian Motherway, who has been leading this project tirelessly from the beginning. Very many thanks, Brian, for the great work you have done. Now, I would like to finish by two things, and looking forward to hear the comments from Brian and the other colleagues. One thing is, it is very important for the Commission members
Great, welcome back. And thank you again to Commissioner Simpson and Dr. Barral for those great opening remarks and the scene setting for the context we are here in today, which is the work of the Global Commission on People-Centred Clean Energy Transitions, which has really done fantastic work to identify some really strong, actionable recommendations as to how all governments and decision makers can make sure that all of their clean energy transition policies are truly people-centred and inclusive. And the 12 recommendations that they make are available on the IEA website, backed up by a large data bank of really interesting best practice case studies from every part of the world, exploring all of the themes and recommendations of the Global Commission. And I'm sure we're going to hear from our panelists about these issues and the wider thoughts from these great thought leaders we have with us today on these important questions. So let's go straight away to our first panelist. And all panelists, if I can implore with all due respect that you speak for no more than 5 minutes. We're already, like all COP events, we're already behind schedule, but we will try and catch up. So first of all, it's a really great pleasure to introduce Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, the new Minister for Natural Resources in Canada. Minister Wilkinson, it's great to have you on board. Canada is already a great global leader in this field, and I know this is something that's very close to your own heart. So we're delighted you were able to join us today, and please, the floor is yours. Yeah, and I'll give you this.
All right. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, and thank you for the remarks that preceded this. I am new to being the Minister of Natural Resources, but for the past few years, I was Canada's Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and so certainly was involved in much of the work around the just transition. Canada believes strongly that the transition that we are embarking upon needs to be an inclusive one, and that means that no communities and no people are left behind as we move through what will be, certainly in some respects, a challenging period. We certainly welcome the report, which I think underlines that climate action and economic progress and economic justice can go hand in hand. And certainly, I think a number of the points that are made in the report are very consistent with some of the things that we have started to do. And I say started because Canada has done a number of different things to try to address this issue. But we have much more to do and much more thinking to do as to how do we ensure that we are successful as we move through the transition. For Canada, when we talk about the just transition, what we mean is that kind of two different pieces. The first is it's about economic diversification, so ensuring that we're seizing the economic opportunities that can come through the energy transition, understanding that there will also be negative impacts, and working to ensure that there are jobs and economic opportunities for families. And the second is that we're supporting workers and communities that are impacted as we move through this transition to ensure that they are actually able to seek out and to pursue the opportunities that we will be creating on the economic side. I think more broadly, it also opens up opportunities for example, in remote communities to actually empower them from an energy system perspective. I spoke at an event yesterday around Indigenous communities that we have been working very hard with to enable them with renewable energy systems that enable them to get off diesel, which has environmental benefits, cultural benefits, and is something that we've not been able to do in the past. And so more broadly, the transition, I think, creates some opportunities that we haven't had. We have worked through the transition on coal. We did that with our partners at the Canadian Labour Congress through a Just Transition Task Force that essentially looked at communities and workers that would be impacted and worked through a process of providing the supports to enable those communities to move forward, both in terms of creating jobs, but also in terms of supporting workers. We have already started on the energy transition in the broader energy sector, making investments in economic opportunities around biofuels, around hydrogen, around renewables, around energy efficiency, electric vehicles, and a whole range of other things. And we set aside in the most recent budget $2 billion for skills training for workers that are going to be impacted, and created a clean center for job skills going forward and allocated $200 million a year to support the transition and worker training. And finally, we will be bringing forward just transition legislation, which will establish the principles that will guide all future governments in terms of ensuring that we are focused on making sure that this transition is an inclusive one. This, as I say, is the beginning. It is not the end. We will be working with our partners in the labor movement and in the business community and the environmental communities to ensure that we are actually being thoughtful about how we move through this. And I would just say that it won't be easy. Anybody who thinks that this is easy, it's not. Certainly in Canada, as in other countries, we have many who are in the fossil fuel producing regions that are very concerned about this process. And we need to be thoughtful about how we respond to that. It is not appropriate from our perspective to simply ignore those, and nor do I think that's healthy for the long-term interests of democracy. We need to respond in a manner that actually will ensure that we are responding to the concerns around jobs, around a future for families, around knowing that there is a future for your children. And so that is something that the Government of Canada is very much focused on. We welcome the report, which I think underlines very much and is very consistent with how we are thinking about this energy transition. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Wilkinson, and it's great to see the great leadership that you personally in Canada are showing in this topic. So thank you for sharing those updates. And as you say, this is the beginning. And now I'd like to turn to Denmark, which is a great pleasure because, as Dr. Baral said, we were very delighted that the work of the Global Commission was under the auspices of the leadership of the Danish Prime Minister. Key global leaders in this field as Denmark's climate ambassador. So, Ambassador Christensen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brian. I hope the microphone works.
We can hear you.
Good. Let me just start with an observation. After all, we are at a conference of the parties to the climate convention. We are at a COP, and at the end, we're here because we are negotiating about the future of the implementation of the Paris Agreement, the Paris Rulebook, and all the other issues that are on the agenda. But this week we have seen a remarkable, almost systemic shift in the way the world talks about climate, because the way the COP has been organized has brought in, first of all, our world leaders, secondly, the leaders of global finance, yesterday, leaders of global energy, and today, the focus on people, on youth, and our populations. And I think that is we've had side events, we've had many days of side events at previous COPs, but this almost systematic and systemic conversation about the policies, the finance, the energy transition, and then the social dimension. We have not had it this way, so that in a way it's not only a side event to the negotiations, but it's almost a global conversation on its own merit about the transition. And that's sort of where I see this the Commission's work as an extremely important piece of that narrative, of that architecture that we are building. And Dr. Birol spoke to the inevitability of the energy transition, and that it's more about the speed and how it happens. And I think, in a way, the fact that maybe for the first time in 25 years of climate negotiations, we've really called the beast by its name. It is about fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas. It's about the transition of those industries and the people working in them, the finance behind them, the policies that guide them. We are also taking the challenge that we as governments have in the negotiations to a new level. This is becoming more real. It's about a real world transition. And in that sense, there are three dimensions to also the work we do with the outcome of the Commission. It is to help drive the energy transition. It is to help us guide the social dimension, but it's also to focus now on getting implementation done and getting the partnerships that are needed in place. And we are probably only at the beginning of this conversation, because until now we haven't really had that social dimension as part of the conversation. And we very much welcome the intention of Dr. Birol to keep this issue on the IEA agenda going forward. And Brian, we look forward to you and your team keeping up working on this going forward to the IEA Ministerial next year. We also hope that the Clean Energy Ministerial will take this issue up next year. These are two good venues. As Denmark, we are working to launch next week the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. Our national experience from our decision to end oil and gas exploration in the North Sea was that because we took the conversation with the unions and with the also oil and gas industry in Denmark and had a long process of actually getting to an agreement about the transition of the workers, the oil and gas industry workers, that decision was in the end, what was a very difficult process was an easy decision because everybody was included and everybody felt that their concerns were taken care of. We think that in order for the transition to be fast and smooth, we actually need to increase our focus on the social dimension. We also welcome the agreement with South Africa. We know that Indonesia is interested in a similar package. It was mentioned. And I think for many of the emerging economies that have put forward very strong ambitions and NDCs this week, which is really applaudable, the onus is now on us, the developed countries, Canada, Denmark, the OECD, working with everyone else to help those countries move their transition up and make it much faster. That is what it takes to get onto the 1.5 trajectory. So hopefully when we meet next year at COP27, we can have an equally strong engagement, not only in the negotiations, but also in driving the systemic shift forward with even more progress also on the social agenda. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those wise words, and particularly for bringing in that global dimension, and also looking forward to COP27, which is a brave thing to do in the middle of COP26. But I like long-term vision, so thank you for that. Let's turn now to the voice of Labour, and a really important key figure in this debate globally, and of course a key member of the Global Commission on People-Centred Clean Energy Transitions. And Sharon, I want to thank you for all the work you do in this topic to really bring the Labour perspective to just transitions, as well as your wider championing of these issues. So it's my pleasure to introduce Sharon Burrow, who's the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. Sharon, please.
Well, thank you, Yeah. Yeah. So I want to thank Dr. Birrell, of course, but Brian, I particularly want to thank you because you've been tireless. You've been incredibly inclusive in the discussion and the engineering of the outcome of the recommendations from the Commission. So we can't say thank you enough because indeed the Danish ambassador has just outlined what makes for success. And Dan Jorgensen's been a champion. We've had a kind of parallel friendship on these issues now for some years because he's understood, just as the ambassador explained it, that when you have people at the table, then you get the agreements that absorb the pain for workers and for communities because, in fact, the transparency of the plan gives people hope. And that's what it's all about. Indeed, even the Canadian task force on coal, which I just told the minister we now need in every industry sector, but nevertheless, going back to that negotiation with the then leader of the Canadian Labour Council and Prime Minister Trudeau, who we dragged off some side event to the side and said, you know, we have to do this. And then the subsequent decisions, it gave everybody a lot of hope. And that's why we need to make sure that the transition, which has to happen, there can be no more coal, there can be no more fossil fuels. We have to set really serious exit dates, but we have to put people at the centre. And the Commission, you know, if you get a group of commissioners from the industry, from governments, from unions, civil society that actually agree up front that clean energy transitions must create jobs, enhance our quality of life, and ensure a cleaner, healthy environment, and frame it as a people-centred approach, ensuring that the benefits and the costs involved in the transformation of our energy systems are distributed fairly and in a way that protects the most vulnerable in society, then I have to say we've got a framing that's right. The hard work's ahead of us, but it's respectful, it's inclusive, and I was delighted to work on this commission. Yesterday, when indeed I was privileged to help open the Energy Day, and the presidency started with the UK-sponsored Declaration on Just Transition, I made sure that people understood that there were other supportive ambitions, and the IEA holds a really important place in the world around energy. So when the IEA puts these two pieces together, just as we saw yesterday at the COP, it gives me great confidence that I can say to the workers in the world, people are actually looking at issues of just transition seriously. Because what it takes is that we integrate those issues into the design of every element of the transition. What does that mean? In line with the principles, it means that you must have national jobs plans, part of the design of the transition, but we must have company or corporate jobs plans as well, whether they're government corporations like Eskom in South Africa or whether they're private corporations, because it's the workers and the communities. And I want to give you a good example. I'm not going to tell you it's without tension, it's not. But Eskom, which was at the heart yesterday of one of the most serious partnerships that were announced with, I'll miss someone out, but the UK, France, Germany, and US, and the EU, thank you very much, supporting the funding in part of that just transition framework. There is a model there. Eskom has done a 2-year study of the impact on communities and workers. It's been inclusive. It's included the voices. Now they're trying to align the jobs plans. And South Africa already has a national jobs plan, but now Eskom's trying to negotiate, in fact, the details of an aligned plan for workers and communities in the transition. That's all we can ask. It will require, of course, secure pensions for older workers who are displaced, and we can't walk away from the fact that in some industries, workers will be displaced. But it also requires income support, skills, and indeed redeployment support for the jobs that will be created in other areas. And it requires, above all, an understanding that these workers build communities. And I'll leave you with the good news. The good news is that in renewable energy, there are if you have 10 jobs in renewable energy, there are 5 to 10 in the manufacturing supply chain. And if they're good jobs with just wages, there's 30 to 35 jobs in the broader community economies. So if we get it right, if in fact we understand that energy is the foundation for the transitions in every sector, in transport, in agriculture, in construction, in automotive, whatever it is, all sectors have to transition, and energy is the foundation. And if we think about the demand and supply curves of our cities and their power in procurement, if we think about what it will take to actually renovate our own homes and the buildings we work in, we can make this happen. But we'll only make it happen if people have let go of the fear, because it's the biggest resistor, the fear that they won't have a part in this future. So just transition, it's not a distraction. Putting the S with the E is the way we will build a new economy, a sustainable economy for the future. And I thank the IEA very much. And we will be taking these principles to those major agenda items next year. You can bet on that, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon, for those very inspiring and positive words. And again, a sincere thanks. It's been a great pleasure to work with you on this Global Commission. Looking forward to the next phase. Let's turn now to Chile, another great global friend of clean energy and a great friend of the IEA, Minister Juan Carlos Jobé, the Energy Minister of Chile. It's been delightful to work with you as well, Minister, and I'm very pleased to give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Brian. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. Commissioner, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to first thank the IEA for leading this work. I think it's very important. It was an honor for us to be part of the commission. And I want to really thank the agency, but especially you, Brian, for all the support you've given us over the last couple of years. I see the agency as the lighthouse that is guiding us all as we navigate this challenging energy transition. I want to make 2 very simple points today. So the first one, it's yesterday we joined the Powering Past Coal Alliance. We are phasing out all our coal capacity. We generate today around 40% of our electricity with coal. It's a big challenge. We're making good progress. Yesterday we said coal is cheap, but the truth is that the small price of coal is really a big lie, we think, because we only pay part of it today and leave the rest of it unpaid for future generations. As a ticking bomb, in a way. We have been navigating this transition out of coal. We are developing renewables very quickly. And the first point I want to make is that even though every country is different, every community is different, if I had the 12 recommendations of the report 2 years ago, when we started that transition, we would have been much more successful. We would have committed much fewer mistakes. So my first point is I invite everyone to take a look at this report, learn the lessons that are there, because even though every place is different, you will learn a lot, and it's going to be of enormous value to everyone all over the world, because I think we are all facing very similar challenges these days. And the second point I want to make is that I see the energy transition as a chain. As every chain, it's as strong as the weakest link of the chain. But there's one topic that I want to bring up, because as a mining country, I think it's very important, which is the transition in mining. I think we don't talk enough about mining when we talk about the energy transition. And the truth is, there's no way we will stop climate change without mining. That's the truth. A lot of people think that since climate change is hurting the environment and mining can sometimes hurt the environment too, the conclusion is that we should stop mining. I think that's a very flawed and even dangerous conclusion. We need to do more mining, but we need to stop mining coal, and we need to accelerate mining of copper, lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earths, and so on. Because if we don't do that, we will not be able to supply the minerals that are critical for electromobility, for renewable energies, and others. So the comprehensive approach that the IAE took to talk about just transition, I think, is essential, and I celebrate it. And again, I was honored to be part of the commission, and I invite everyone to take a look at the report and use the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Yobe. And again, thanks for your leadership and your work with us. Colleagues, we are a little behind time. I apologize. I apologize to our speakers, but also to our audience. But we're going to move now to Germany, where we're going to hear direct from Germany, I hope, from Jochen Fleischbart, who's the State Secretary for Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. So, State Secretary, you're very welcome. Thank you for your patience, and the floor is now yours.
That is a tremendous change, and at the origin of all of this, the energy supply is key. You will not decarbonize our industries or steel industry or others. You will not decarbonize the traffic and transport sector without renewable energy, green energy going into that. This means we have to ramp up the installation of renewables. We have to give a boost, a tremendous boost to energy efficiency. We will need to build up grids where they are not available yet. We need to renovate our grids, to modernize our grids where we have them. And all this just in basically 2.5 to 3 decades. This is enormous change, and of course creating the new one at the same time means that we need to phase out the old systems, the fossil-based systems. And as mentioned by many, a lot of people are employed in these sectors, and we have to organize it in a way. We have the figures from IRENA. We have to organize it in a way that we make use of the potential that we have on the job side with new energy systems. I just mentioned IRENA, who assessed that 120 million people can be employed by renewable sustainable by the new energy system by 2050. But of course, we need to make this happen. And what we all quote from New York, from our 2030 agenda, to leave nobody behind, this has to be not something about words, it has to happen. And therefore, I want to highlight again what has been mentioned by many of my colleagues and friends, the cooperation with South Africa, with the countries that have been mentioned. And I think that is something like a masterpiece that can be a blueprint how we are going to cooperate mutually, as said in the Paris Agreement, to help other countries to decarbonize their economies. And the challenge for South Africa to get away from coal is tremendous. And I know what I'm talking about in Germany, how hard it was for us, and we are a wealthy country, to get out of coal, and we will be earlier. By the way, I'm very sure that so far announced. But for South Africa, the challenge is quite much higher, and therefore we are very happy to be part of the coalition, to liaise with South Africa to make it happen, technology-wise, but also with regard to just transition. And Germany is supporting specifically through my ministry this aspect. Also, with one of our international climate initiative projects, focusing on, I think Indonesia has mentioned already by one of my colleagues, for Indonesia and India to transform their energy base in these very important countries in a just way, getting everybody on board again, leaving nobody behind. So happy to be part of this side event, and back to you, moderator. Thanks for connecting me to this event.
Thank you very much, State Secretary, and greetings from us all in Glasgow. And really thank you for your wise words, particularly the emphasis on the need to consider the range of actions and the range of change that is coming. And that's, of course, why people need to be really at the center of things. And now let's move on to our last panel. And again, panelists, apologies for our slight delay. And I would ask you to keep to 5 minutes, because I know you're all very busy people, as are our audience. But it's really a particular pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Minister Sophie Lalema, who has been at the co-chair of the Global Commission and a real global leader in this space. So, Minister Lalema, I really want to thank you very much. Bienvenue et je vous donne la parole. Merci.
Thank you, Brian. Excellences, Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames, Messieurs.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Minister, it's a great pleasure to be here with you in person this morning. Now, the most important thing is to be able to see each other, to greet each other, to discuss these issues. And in the context of COP26 meeting in Glasgow, we are grateful to be able to participate in this under the presidency of Denmark, and in the panel organised by the AEA. Now, it's a great pleasure for us to contribute to the reflection on a just energy transition. Since March, the World Commission has been working together and we have set up a framework allowing us to exchange experiences between countries, some in different stages of development with different resources, but we've all come together to tackle an overwhelming global challenge, climate change. We need to ensure that this transition is just and people-centered. We have to work on a micro level and a macro level with individuals and between different countries. We need to ensure that our recommendations are implemented. It's important for us to remain vigilant. Both public and private organizations need to invest in clean energy, but we cannot allow individuals or workers to bear the burden. We have to define our targets and ensure that the weakest are protected. And we will continue our work after COP26. across the whole of the value chain, we have to ensure that the impact on the environment is taken into account. Now, in Senegal, we have adopted this approach. We are focused on the individual and the social economic impact of policies which we are implementing. 68% of our population is made of young people under the age of 25. We also looked at the impact of women and rural workers as well. Many of the initiatives taken in Senegal, which have already been implemented, have focused on this. We're not looking not just at the national biogas program, which will produce gas for domestic use, but also contribute to healthy and safe agriculture. We have another national program called the National Energy Program, which is led by the Energy Saving Agency. We have signed agreements with the National Federation of Bakers, which uses a lot of energy, but other associations who will contribute to making energy savings across the board. So our experience in national programs will allow us to continue to work together and contribute to the work of the IEA. We hope to contribute to cooperation between subgroups based on sociocultural, regional, geographical issues. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest challenge we have in front of us will be on a macro level. Coordination, justice, and fairness has to be the heart of our discussions. We also need to set up international cooperation between different countries. We cannot take a one-size-fits-all approach, however. Given the different stages of development to which we find each other, our different economic resources, we have to have a differentiated approach. If you look at any approach taken to the consumption of oil, this will be an earthquake for those countries still in the earlier stages of development. More specifically, the African countries have the resources necessary in order to ensure our industrial development, but we will be scuppered by an unfair energy transition if a one-size-fits-all approach is taken. We need a transitional period. We need financing mechanisms for oil and gas projects in some regions in order to support our countries. It goes beyond political stability and fairness. We need to support our regions and countries. Then the financial aspects have to be taken into account. We have to ensure fair access to technology in our different countries in order to facilitate the adoption of the appropriate policies. Agencies such as the IAE need to be reformed to have a broader governance with representatives, countries around the world with clear priorities. This is absolutely crucial for a fair energy transition and to ensure that the recommendations made by all parties are actually followed downstream from the COP. Let me stress once again, Senegal is available and willing to work together with you. We will be President of the African Union in 2022 and working closely on the energy trans issues as such, working towards a fair energy transition both in Africa and around the world. Let me conclude by congratulating all ministers and stakeholders who are participating in this commission, especially the Danish minister who has led the remarkable work done over the last few months. But of course, I must thank the technical team as well, Brian and others. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Et aussi, je veux remercier, vous féliciter aussi.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you and also congratulate you on your leadership.
Thank you for reminding us of the different contexts we work in, and the Senegalese perspective really, really important, and also for your leadership as co-chair we're delighted to have you involved, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the business perspective is really important here, and so I'm delighted that our next speaker brings that richly from both China and globally as a leader in the clean energy space, bringing lots of ideas to how clean energy can be accelerated, but also how it can be people-centered, it can be focused on jobs and well-being of communities and countries. So Zhang Lei is the CEO of the Envision Group, a global leading group in many aspects of clean energy. And Mr. Zhang, it's a great pleasure to have you here, and I now give you the floor.
Thanks. So I believe this energy transition is more than just. It's the fantastic opportunities for developing countries to flock leap, to build the modern renewable energy system, also to build a modern green industry based on such a system. Fantastic opportunities. So, normally, why a place, a region is in developing? Because in the history, this place normally is not very good for living. It has strong wind, has too much sun, and too much waters. So not as comfortable as the normal situation, which actually today, in such a remote place, this abundant resources is the fuel to develop a new energy economy. So I'll give examples. So in the Mongolia, which abundant coal mining for entire China, there's a city called Erdos. So this city is producing 16% of coal the entire China consume. Huge. And the people working there normally is surrounding coal industry, coal mining, coal power plant, and coal chemicals. Very single exposure to the entire coal business. However, we do see this place has tremendous wind and solar. It has more than 100 gigawatt renewable sources. But it's in remote place. The high voltage transmission line is not capable to transfer such a big amount of volume to a place like Shanghai. Is there some, but limited. So we need to find the technology to unlock this huge potential of renewable sources. So Envision, find one. So we create a technology called net zero industrial park. What that means? Now we become independent of the grid. We combining wind, solar with hydrogen, plus lithium battery storage, and also the seasonal storage, like liquefied air, combining with digital solution to create a very stable renewable energy supply. It's much cheaper than the fossil fuel, half the cost. And especially, we are using this green energy to making green products. The battery manufacturing normally is high energy intensity. And the green energy, we are going to making cathode, anode, and the battery itself. And further, we introduce largest commercial vehicle company in China, FAW, into this national industrial park. They are making EV truck along us. And also gradually we are building the system like a carbon fiber, this modern industrial system, which needs lots of energy, but in a green way. So we see now it really shortens the income inequity and bring lots of opportunities. And the university students, who are studying in Beijing, Shanghai, now move back to Inner Mongolia because they think there's a sexy job, fantastic high technology job is waiting for them in this remote area. And they are so close to their family. So I think which is very encouraging. Within next year, this industrial park is going to bring 20,000 highly skilled jobs. And furthermore, along these sectors, the wind turbine manufacturing, solar panel manufacturing is also developing. People who are mining the coal, now they're becoming the company doing the maintenance, operation, and the wind turbine manufacturing. So it's totally, we see the hope is rising, opportunity is rising. So end of the day, we think in today's such energy transition, all the country is developing country. No matter developed or developing, we just beginning the journey for this net zero transition in terms of green technology, in terms renewable energy. So it's a fantastic opportunity especially for developing country. It's a frog leap opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks. It's very inspiring to hear those words. You're right that we are at the beginning of a journey, but you also paint the picture of how inspiring and positive the journey can be. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you again for your participation in the Global Commission, and Madame la Ministre also. Thank you, all of our speakers today and our audience here in the room and online. It's been a delight to have these discussions. And I must say, it's been really a delight to work with all of our friends on the Global Commission in the last months. And I think they produced really excellent recommendations, so I commend them to everybody. I also want to thank our speakers, not just on behalf of the IEA, but on behalf of the European Commission, and add my thanks to the Commissioner and all of her team and all of our friends and stakeholders and collaborators in the European Commission on this topic and many others. We're very pleased to be working so closely with you, very pleased to have co-hosted the event today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll draw the event to a close, and thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you.